Like many of his prayerful followers all over the world, my family's relationship with Saint Pio Pietrelcina is of an unusually personal nature. It all began in 2006 when my husband Pete, a cancer and stroke patient, found great comfort in a relic that was brought to him regularly by Rafa Ortigas of the St. Pio Center in Libis, Quezon City. When Pete passed away in 2007, I continued with his devotion and service to the saint who he had grown very fond of. I instituted PRIME, the Pete Roa Integrated Media Endeavors Foundation, one of the key missions of which was to propagate devotion to the saint.
Our first major project in this regard was the production of a play on Saint Pio, written and directed by Nestor Torre, where I played the saint's mother, Maria Giuseppa.
As we rehearsed and performed the dramatic religious drama with Ricky Dawao playing the lead role, I got to know Padre Pio better, and the bond that was growing between us further intensified. I learned that even as a child, he had to contend with visits by demons who would accost him in the guise of animals, terrifying the poor boy until heavenly forces came to his rescue. As a sickly youth, Pio had a hard time when he was studying to be a priest, but he persevered until he was finally ordained. But it turned out that was only the start of his saintly struggles, which culminated in the unforgettable day when he received the stigmata of Christ on the cross, which he endured for decades until his death. Producing and acting in a play on his life answered many questions for me, but it made me want to know much more about the saint, as much as possible on a first-hand basis. That's why it felt like an answered prayer when in 2009, I was invited to join a pilgrimage, one of the highlights of which was a visit to San Giovanni Rotondo, where the saint lived and died. As our group of 70 pilgrims traveled by plane to Italy, then by bus to Pietrelcina, my mind and heart were filled with hope, excitement, and gratitude as we began our journey with Padre Pio into the light. We are now at the beautiful, the vast, and the majestic San Giovanni Rotondo Square, where immediately in front of us we have the new St. Pio Chapel or St. Pio Church, which houses the new tomb of St. Pio. And the other side of the square, we have the old church, the Santa Maria della Grazia Church, which also houses a museum where we can find the bedroom, the sacristy, the service room of the priest. We're also facing a series of carillons and the crucifix, which is a landmark of this rotundum. It is also a privilege of ours to be together with a pilgrim group of Filipinos. They have assembled to come and join us under the chaplainship of Father Arlo Yap, SVD, in a pilgrimage organized by Pearl Buenafe of Toronto and Rose Galang of Ephesus Tours. Padre Pio holds a very special place in my heart because, in a manner of speaking, he brought a miracle, no matter how small, but definitely significant to our life as a family. When my late husband Pete was introduced to him by Ramon Rodriguez of the St. Pio Center in the Philippines, when the relics were brought to him. That started his devotion to Padre Pio unto his death 6 months after. As a family, we never asked that Padre Pio heal his cancer, which afflicted him during the last 6 months of his life, 10 years of which were as a stroke patient. We never asked for the miracle of physical healing, but the healing of Pete's soul, that he would surrender soon to the will of God and live the rest of his months in peace and in serenity, looking forward to God's embrace when the time finally came. That to me was the miracle of Padre Pio. When we entered the old church, I was moved to tears when I saw the confessional where Padre Pio had given spiritual comfort to thousands upon thousands of searching and troubled souls for many years. And in the museum adjoining the church, the vestments and gloves he had worn, the holy chalices and crucifix he had touched. And in his small cell, the religious objects that to this day are mute but eloquent witnesses to the simplicity and depth of his saintly spirituality. In the crypt where St. Pio's coffin is now entombed, I prayed not just for Pete and my family, not just for our pilgrim group, but for all Filipinos, for St. Pio's continuing love and guidance. All of these thoughts and feelings surged when I saw the very same crucifix before which Padre Pio had prayed and experienced the physical pain and spiritual ardor of his stigmata. And praying in front of a life-size statue of Padre Pio, I thanked him for helping my husband Pete find spiritual comfort and serenity unto his final days. I also prayed that my own relationship with St. Pio would be blessed with enlightenment during this visit and in the days and years to come. We are very privileged to be among the early visitors of this magnificent hall, which is the crypt, the new crypt of St. Pio of Pietrelcina. This is situated in the basement of the new St. Pio of Pietrelcina Church. And a significant factor is that the Philippine representation has helped a lot, very substantially, in putting up this hall and this crypt. And to tell us more about this is an authority on St. Pio of Pietrelcina and also an officer of the foundation, Father Antonio Pompilio. Buongiorno, Father. Please tell us why this was built and how this was built and what for.
The friar built this crypt and this new church because it's necessary to welcome the people. When Padre Pio was alive, was sufficient, the old church, but after his death, is not sufficient, the church. It was necessary to build a new church, very, very big, to say welcome everybody in a comfortable way. That is why. But it is important not to build only the church, but to create the place of prayer. The artist is Father Rupnik. He taught about this place like a place of prayer, artist and prayer together. The idea beautiful is this, to present the Padre Pio's and St. Francis' life and together go in the Christ life. And this crypt, the panels in this crypt representing the Christ life and finish it at the resurrection of Christ.
Father, we said earlier that there is a big Philippine representation in the construction and the finishing.
When I have been in the Philippines, I told them, do you want to contribute about this project? And when I said this, immediately Ramon said, yes, I want, because Padre Pio is all in my life, and the same his friends. And my province donated to the Philippine Center for this habit, Padre Pio habit.
Yes.
And the Philippines are very proud of this, because it's a very, very precious relic.
Father, thank you for leading us to this crypt by way of that marvelous hall, which bore different panels in mosaic. I'm sure all of them have their own significance. But what to you would be most important? What to you would relate most, especially to the devotion of the Filipinos to Padre Pio?
I think Padre Pio and Christ, when Christ is on the cross, is important. Why? Because the people of Philippines, we know, especially in this time, suffer a lot for typhoon, for poverty, for many problems. And I think this suffering, when the Philippines people saw Jesus Christ on the cross, and Father Pio of Pietrelcina, who helped Jesus Christ, I think is a beautiful and very, very big teaching to comfort and to stay with these people.
One of the projects closest to Padre Pio's heart was the construction of a hospital for pilgrims, the sickly, and the needy. Naturally, when we were at San Giovanni Rotondo, we made it a point to visit the hospital and talk to its medical director about its medical facilities, continuing care, and services to thousands upon thousands of patients.
Padre Pio, all'inizio di questa grande avventura, che è l'ospedale Casa Sollievo della Sofferenza, al momento dell'inaugurazione formula 3 discorsi che sono fondamentali nel delineare la missione di Casa Sollievo della Sofferenza. Innanzitutto la cura, ma la cura della malattia, ma soprattutto dello spirito. Quindi portare al letto dell'ammalato la medicina, la scienza, ma portare l'amore al letto dell'ammalato. Questo ospedale viene costruito su una montagna, brulla, pietrosa. Oggi qui, grazie alla forza del messaggio di Padre Pio, c'è uno degli ospedali o degli istituti scientifici di ricerca più importanti d'Italia e un istituto che fa ricerca con partner di tutto il mondo. Il problema per noi è essere fedeli alla missione di Padre Pio ed essere fedeli sia sul versante dell'assistenza e della cura, sia sul versante della carità, dell'amore verso l'ammalato.
On the bus traveling after San Giovanni Rotondo, I asked our chaplain, Father Arlo, what it was about Padre Pio that had drawn him so strongly to the saint.
Kaya ako nakaka-relate sa kanya madali because he happened in my lifetime. Now, he died in my lifetime. Tapos he was canonized in my lifetime. Kaya hindi ako malayo sa kanya. Nung una ko siya nakita doon sa San Giovanni, kita ko yung kanyang body. At it was only exposed a month after yung the congregation decided na i-expose yung kanyang incorruptible body. Nakita ko yun. Tapos talagang naglalabig ako, hindi ko malaman yung sarili ko because si Padre Pio nasa harapan ko.
Ang movement towards Padre Pio by way of devotions, napakalaki na po sa ating bansa, all over the world, at napakabilis ng paglagana. What do you attribute this to?
Hindi siya nagpa-pilocate lang. Multi-locations because of those people who he touched na gusto mag-propagate ng kanyang devotion. In other words, during his lifetime, meron siyang bilocations na. But ngayon, multiplication ng kanyang location. Plus pa yung mga personal na tinouch niya in their own personal experience. Nakita nila yung generosity of Padre Pio sa kanila by leading them to healing, conversion, answered prayers, so much blessings coming from the Lord through the intercession of Padre Pio.
Mrs. Tinders, napansin ko nung nandun tayo sa San Giovanni Rotondo, talagang napaka-taimtim ng inyong pagdarasal. Bakit ho?
Pasasalamat po yung kay Padre Pio
Pasasalamat.
Pasasalamat.
Pasasalamat sa ano po?
Sa complete recovery ng apo ko from leukemia and thalassemia. Kailangan i-bone marrow tap.
Bone marrow tap.
O yung examination para ma-confirm kung talagang leukemia yung sakit ni Eva. Bago yan naka-schedule, nakakuha ko ng Lubina. Kay Padre Pio, pumasok ko sa isang store ng mga religious, basta pumasok lang ko doon. I saw it. Pero hindi ka 6 days pa lang ng Lubina ko
6 out of 9 days.
Out of 9 days. Kasi late na nga yung pag-restart ko Kasi nung nag-start ako, medyo late na nga nung nandun na sa hospital. 6 day yun. Tapos nung bago ko matapos, nakauwi na kami, dumating na yung text back ng hematology.
Na ang laman ng text message?
Not worry because normal ang kanyang bone marrow. Nagulat ako, talagang I was crying with joy.
Ano ang gusto ninyong ipahatid sa mga nanonood sa atin about the power of Padre Pio?
Ang gusto ko lang ipahatid sa kanila, Padre Pio is like a father kahit wala na siya. Parang ama yan, parang tatay ninyo. Do not lose hope.
Perhaps less dramatic but even deeper and wider in influence and impact is what happened to some members of our pilgrim group after we came back home. Inspired by their experience in San Giovanni Rotondo, they formed an informal group that has been going around the country encouraging people people to pray for the saints' intercession by way of a relic which draws devotees wherever they go. What has the experience been like so far?
It's been a lifetime of pilgrimage up to San Giovanni Rotondo. I think what we have done was to propagate devotion to Padre Pio using the relic that was given to us when we were there. And this relic, piece of cloth inside the gold encasement, is part of a gauze that was used to wipe the stigmata of Padre Pio.
That's what makes it a first-class relic.
That was, yes ma'am. With this relic, we have been to different hospitals.
Different churches, I think. Yes.
In churches, yes. We have been to Asian Hospital, Makati Medical City, St. Luke's, with the relic, and through the mercy of God, we were able to heal an ex-seminarian. Name was Valentino Siriaco. When we got to the hospital, he was skin and bones. He had severe diabetes complications.
Oh, okay. All right.
The nurse was telling us that the day before we were there, his blood sugar was 350. And the morning that we were there, his blood sugar was 235. After we prayed over Valentino, his blood sugar dropped to 93. And then we had another healing incident where I attended a birthday party of Fred, suffering from leukemia. And after we ate, I assembled the group, all the guests in the living room, and I did a pray over. Pinahawak ko sa kanila yung relic.
Yes.
Nung nagpe-pray over ko sila, nagpo-pulsate yung kamay ko. Gumaganon, parang yung heartbeat. But yung heartbeat na dahan-dahan nagpo-pulsate.
Almost throbbing.
It was throbbing. Tapos, after that, si Bonnie, tinanggal niya yung kamay niya. Tapos, he started gripping me like this. Sabi ko, Bonnie, masakit yan. Sabi niya, oo, nahil na po. Sabi niya ganun. Tapos, he started, laughing and smiling, and he was so overjoyed. You could see from his face that he was so happy, tremendously happy. Sabi niya, 12 years na ako semi-paralyzed yung left hand ko.
Yeah.
So sabi niya, nakaka-grip na ako, tignan mo.
Mula po sa hanay ng napakaraming devoto kay Padre Pio, narito si Margie at si Nilo Jacobo at ang kanilang miracle baby, si Marge Neil Pio. Kumusta po kayo?
Okay lang po, ma'am.
Ano ang papel na ginampanan ni Padre Pio sa inyong buhay?
Bali, po siya, ma'am. 9 years po kami magkasama.
Okay.
Tapos po, may sakit po yung mister ko. Hernia.
So, ano ang rason kung ba't hindi kayo magkaanak all of yung 9 years na yan?
Kasi po, bababa na po yung matris ko. Tsaka diabetic po ako.
So, paano niyo nakilala si Padre Pio?
Bali, isa po ako sa tauhan po ni Mr. Rodriguez. Gabi-gabi po nagdadasal po kami. Doon po sa harap ng grupo. Tapos, inilag ko po yung vlogs ni Padre Pio. Binago ko po sa chat ko. Tapos, nagdadasal po ako. Bigyan po kami ng ko po sa kanya.
Marge Neil, ano gusto mo sabihin kay Papa Pio?
Ay, Papa Pio.
Ayun. Justin Malasigan, 35 years old, with 3 children, married to Vincent, a banker, and once a victim of depression, now a dear friend of Padre Pio. Justin, describe mo sa amin itong depression na ito. Anong nangyari?
When the depression came in, hanap ko talaga ng kakapitan. And one of the closest priest is Father Vic Robles of the Divine Mercy. He told me, why don't you start a devotion to Padre
Padre
Pio.
Pio.
I went to the priest again and said I was able to visit the church and I was able to buy oil. Sabi niya, sige, why don't you confess to me right now? Sabi niya, oh, sige, I did confession. I haven't been confessing for 15 years since I graduated college. Nung gabi na yon, nagpakain ako ng oil sa mommy ko. Sobrang may na-feel akong great energy. Pwede siyang kilabot, but it's not, hindi siya nakakatakot, but it's like an ecstatic experience. It's like a very, very great energy that filled me. This experience is really a healing process, and that God is really arranging my life for going back to Him.
Doktora, itong uncle po ninyo, si Agustin Zabala, ilang taon na po siya?
He's 79 years old.
Yes.
And he had been suffering from coronary artery disease. He had several heart attacks in the past. And the last time that he was brought to Makati Medical Center was towards the end of January. And when I saw him there, the outlook was not really positive. I told my auntie, I know of this center, and if you want, I can take you there. And I gave her a bottle of blessed oil. And she started rubbing oil on the patient. And the day after, there was a very dramatic improvement in the condition of the patient.
So what happened? What was the change or the transformation after the healing?
After I saw him, after the healing,
Yes.
he looked normal.
Okay.
His face was normal. The parts
The
which,
puffiness went out?
yeah,
Okay.
the parts which were red were no more, and he can breathe normally.
Ira, gaano ka-advanced na yung breast cancer mo nung ma-diagnose ka?
Actually, there was no formal diagnosis.
Okay.
What happened was, December of 2008, I had mastitis, and we treated it with antibiotics.
Okay.
And then it came back June of 2009.
All right.
But the pain was very intense then. It was unlike December of 2008. So I called my OB-GYN. I said, the pain is back. Yes. And then the Saturday, we went to the oncologist and she said, this does not look good. Why didn't you come back 3 years before? I'm sure the breast has changed already. I asked, is it IBC? This is for inflammatory breast cancer.
Yes.
And then she said, yes, and it's probably 3B already. Once the symptoms are out,
Okay.
when you see visible symptoms like that, it's already 3B.
Oo. And how did Padre Pio help you?
My sister from Baguio called me up when she said, look for the Padre Pio Chapel in Libis. So I went, and then I had to observe how they do it because it was going to be my first time. And so it was my turn. I also held his hand, so I was very awkward. But then I said, Padre Pio, I am Ira. I'm 39 years old. I have 2 sons and I'm very sick. I need your help. Please pray for me. After I said that, and then when I was about to release his hands to let the other person take his
Yes.
turn with him, there was throbbing on my breast. 5 throbs, very distinct throbs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Which meant,
I was shocked because oh no, he answered me. I just felt that, yes, I am going to be healed. He is going to pray for me. I said, thank you.
A major event at the St. Pio Center was the recent inauguration of the new Gethsemane Garden, dedicated to the memory of Rafa Ortigas Jr., former chairman of the board of the Philippine Center for St. Pio of Pietrelcina. The inauguration of the Meditation Garden was attended by the members of the Ortigas family and other benefactors of the center's activities. It was a moving occasion for them because they recalled Mr. Ortigas' devotion to the saint and his many generous and selfless philanthropic works. We are very honored to have with us a younger brother of attorney Rafa Ortigas, in whose memory the inaugural was held. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Boots.
May I call you Nachi?
Sure.
Yes. As a brother of the deceased attorney Ortigas, would you like to give us an inkling into how your family was introduced to the devotion of to Padre Pio?
In my recollection, Boots, this brings me back to my youth when my mother used to recount to us stories on Padre Pio, and Padre Pio was then alive. And ever since then, I can't say I had a very strong devotion, but to my recollection, I don't forget whenever I had very pressing moments, I resorted to him. And I can say that regardless of the outcome, I felt a peace, something that left me at ease after calling for his aid.
It's common knowledge among the devotees and the frequent visitors here to the St. Pio Center that Attorney Rafa was a very vibrant and vital factor in the spread of the devotion. What can you say about that?
Rafa was all out, in promoting, in trying to foster devotion to Padre Pio. I can't remember him. Barely a week would pass without his having to somehow talk about Padre Pio. And during his last years, I would say he was fully dedicated, in trying to promote Padre Pio. And I would say it was contagious. I mean, it had an effect on the family, at least on our family and my sister's family. It awakened an awareness for Padre Pio.
At the newly inaugurated Garden of Gethsemane Meditation Center at the St. Pio of Pietrelcina Foundation, we have with us the youngest sister of attorney Rafa Ortigas, in whose memory this whole center is being dedicated, Mrs. Chari Ortigas Montilla. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And thank you for your time. Yeah, Mrs. Montilla, we'd just like to know how and when was the devotion to Padre Pio introduced with you and with your family?
It must have been like in the early 60s. And I recall that my father had his first heart attack in 1961. So definitely it affected me a lot and the whole family. It really got me, interested in wanting to go and see him because he was still alive. But unfortunately, because of my father's condition, he never wanted to travel. So we didn't get to go.
And of course, we're very grateful to the St. Pio Foundation here and your family, because a lot of support has also been extended to the San Giovanni chapel, where Padre Pio will be entombed very soon.
Every day he was praying, and the novena, the rosary, all of that. He was really very prayerful.
And now that Attorney Rafa is gone, he's been gone since June 15.
That's right.
Of 2009. What kind of presence in his devotion to Padre Pio do you as a family feel?
Well, I mean, every time I pray to Padre Pio, I see Rafa's face.
For some time now, I've been a devotee of Our Lady, and I saw up close also the impact of some other devotions to people, like our president, Rafa Ortigas. He was so intimately devoted with Padre Pio. And on a couple of occasions, he had attributed his miraculous recovery from his
two life-threatening episodes to Padre Pio. And I've seen that because I saw how his health was threatened. And when he got out of those, he was like a new person. And as this continued, we expressed our gratitude to Padre Pio. And that's why, as you know, Butch, we've been quite happy for having been considered a supporter of all those initiatives that would propagate the devotion to the good saint. There was another friend, very dear friend of mine, former presiding justice Francis Garcia-Torena, who was in the hospital when Rafa, being also a friend, sent the glove of Padre Pio. And I understand that the day after, a couple of days after he was intimate with the glove of Padre Pio, that he was able to get out of the hospital and say his proper goodbyes. He eventually died. But that, again, to me, a miraculous recovery, to gain strength, to say his proper goodbyes, I think, is a manifestation of the powerful influence of Padre Pio in people's lives. So the company continues to be very grateful for these miracles that have happened to people who we've been privileged to touch. Our good friend Justice Francis and our former president Rafa Ortigas. One of our initiatives as part of our social responsibility program, for example, was building or help build a system of shrines or prayer markers from EDSA Shrine all the way to Antipolo. We have helped build 20 prayer markers representing the 20 mysteries of the Holy Rosary. And it was Rafa's way of helping Cardinal Sin, who wanted to put more spiritual element in the annual pilgrimage to Antipolo, and a few other initiatives along those lines. You've seen our chapel in Green Hills and a beautiful diorama of the Holy Rosary, the Stations of the Cross. And not just limited to the Catholic religion, we also built a fully carpeted, fully air-conditioned Muslim prayer room for the 500 or 600 Muslim merchants that we have in Green Hills. And to me, that's a deeper commitment to social responsibility in Green Hills. We are showing the world that Muslims and Catholics and Christians and Protestants and can work, live, play, and make money together.
Alam po ninyo kapag mayroong mga kababayan tayo na napapabanda dito sa Libis, sa Quezon City, sila'y napapatigil, namamangha sa isang lugar na kung ngayon ay tawagin at kilalanin bilang St. Pio of Pietrelcina Center. At lalong nagiging matingkad itong paghangang ito, pagkamanghang ito, kapag sila ay pumasok na sa kapilya at nakita nila unang-una ang namamayaning presence o presensya ni St. Pio sa pamamagitan ng kanyang estatwa at ang napakaraming reflections o pamamahayag ng napakalaking debosyon at pagmamahal natin sa naturang santo. Ito po ay dahil sa pagmamahal, debosyon at pagpupunyagi ng isang lupon ng mga deboto kay St. Pio na pinamumunuan po ni Mr. Ramon Rodriguez. Ramon, may I call you Ramon?
Yes, yeah,
Mr.
sure.
Rodriguez. Alam ng mga tao kung gaano kalaki bilang isang businessman. Business magnate, kolektor ng mga kotse, at napakarami pa mga ibang interests. And seeing you the way you are now, at kung paano mo pinapamahalaan ito, isa lang ang tanong ko sa simula, paano ba nangyari ito? Paano nagsimula itong devotion mo kay St. Pio?
Ang devotion ko kay St. Pio nagsimula noong pang 1977. Dahil sa nabulag ako noon. Yung kanan mata ko nabulag. dahil sa pagbabago ng buhay ko. From a very religious person, aral ako sa letran kasi. From grade 1 to college, nasa letran ako. Mga Kastila ang pare at mahihigpit sila talaga.
Dominicans ito, di ba?
O Dominican. Doon nag-umpisa ang aking buhay na maging reliyoso. Ngunit dumating yung parte ng buhay ko, yung nagkatrabaho na ako, nag-umpisa na yung success dumating, dumami yung income, gumanda ng gumanda, nakalimutan ko na magdasal sa Panginoon. But the time came na my wife told me, Ramon, hindi na tayo nagsisimba. Magsimba naman tayo. Ikaw na lang ang magsimba, sama mo yung mga bata. Ako maghahunting ngayon ng ibon. Mga 5 o'clock ng hapon, merong isang ibon na ang laki-laki, ang ganda-ganda, kulay puti. Lumipad sa harapan ko, bumaba dito sa kaliwa ng sasakyan ko. At tumutuka lang siya sa lupa, titignan ako tapos ganun, tutuka na naman, titignan naman ako. Nung kinuha ko yung baril ko, doon nag-iba na. Pag asinta ko sa kanya, pinikit ko yung kaliwang mata ko, nawala yung ibon. Yung dinilat ko uli yung kaliwang mata ko, nandun pa siya. Inasinta ko uli, second time, nawala. Dilat na naman yung kaliwa, nandun. Third time, inasinta ko uli, nawala. Sabi ko, bakit ganito to? Ginanong ko yung kaliwang mata ko, nawala. Pag ginanyan ko, meron. Gumanon ako, tinitignan ko yung kwan, agad bulag. Bulag na yung mata ko. Biglang nabulag. The next day, nagpa-check up ako sa doktor. Sabi sa akin ng doktor, alam mo Ramon, talagang pambihira ka. Napakaswerte mong tao. Dahil sabi niya, ang BP mo is 230/110. Buhay ka pa hanggang ngayon. Ang swerte mo, lahat ng ugat sa right eye mo ang pumutok. Lahat dyan sira na mata mo. Kung yung dito ang pumutok, patay ka na kahapon pa. Isang araw may dumating sa akin bisita na wala, pumunta lang sa bahay ko para makipagkape, makipagkwento. And then before he left, sabi niya sa akin, kamusta na yung mata mo? Kako okay naman. Anong okay? Alam namin bulag ka. Ako yung right eye kong bulag. Sabi niya, alam mo, nabulag ka. Ang hindi sakit yan. Binulag ka ng Panginoon. Eto, novena. Subukan mo, magaling to. Napatingin ako dun sa novena. Ako, napakalino naman itong novenang to. Tinitignan kong ganun. Kinuha ko. Ang linaw-linaw nitong novena. Gumanon ako, malinaw pa rin sa right eye. Ganun, malinaw. Tinakbang ko yung kaliwang mata ko. Diyos ko, sabi ko, hindi na ako bulag. Nababasa ko, yung novena, nakikita ko. Pero pag tumingin ako sa ibang ganun, bulag na naman ako. So, sabi ko sa sarili ko, baka milagro na to. Padre Pio, alam mo ngayon lang kita nakita sa buhay ko eh. Kung totoo ka dahil nababasa kita, kako sa kanya, pagalingin mo ang mata ko within 30 days. On the 28th day, pag ganyan ko ng mata ko, clear. Kita ko yung ceiling, kita ko yung wife ko natutulog si Didi. Wala na, hindi na ako bulag.
Paano naman nasimula yung pagsalin mo o pag-translate mo sa constructive na kilos, pamamahala, networking, para dito sa devotion mo kay Padre Pio?
Noong 1979, may dumating ditong 6 na pare from San Giovanni, Rotondo. Mga Italiano talaga. Ang kanilang leader that trip was Father si Alessio Parente. Siya ang dumating dito. Kakilala nila si Bishop Jesus Siso ng Tarlac. Si Bishop Season ang nagpakilala sa akin sa kanila. Mga pari daw ito galing sa Italy. Ako naman, sige ako. Doon ko sa bahay namin pinatira. Yung matapos sila nag-ayos ng gamit nila, sabi sa akin ni Father Alicio, kailangan daw nila ng isang kanto sa bahay na anywhere, isang kwarto na pag magmimisa sila, 1 mass a day lahat. So sabi kong ganun, follow me, Father. So sumunod naman, hindi niya alam, dinala ko siya doon sa chapel ko sa bahay, hindi nila alam may chapel na ako. At pagpasok nila sa chapel, si Padre Pio nakagano'n. Nasyak sila lahat. Tapos sinabi sa akin na ang decision ng Italy is to put up the first center in Asia in the Philippines because it is a Catholic nation. Pagkatapos, tinuro sa amin ng US Center kung paano gagawin yung prayer group. Ang dali-dali lang pala. Tapos sabi sa akin, Ramon, you are still very young. We know you are devoted to Padre Pio. And we like you to help Bishop Season put up the Philippine Center. You must finance the Philippine Center. Are you agreeable? Yes, Father. I will do my best. Kaming original directors, naging in-incorporate na namin si Bishop Season, ako, si Mrs. Calandra, si Atty. Mercado, Job de Jesus, Josie Pulumbarit, si Monsignor Pedrosa, si Rafa Ortigas, Paki Ortigas, saka mga 10 din kami yun. Inumpisahan namin yan. And then, yung naging saint na siya, dumami. So, medyo naging busy. Pero ako naman, hindi ko inaasikaso. Lagi ako nasa Batangas.
2002, no?
Oo.
Naging saint siya.
2002.
16 was it?
Basta bigla na lang I've been in Batangas for more than 3 years. Doon ako nagpo-process ng mga isda. I just came back here one day. Hanggang ngayon, hindi na ako nakaalis dito. Tapos bandang huli, hindi yung sinasabi na kinalabit ka na, Ramon. Sabi ko, hindi ako kinalabit. Binatukan na ako talaga. Magbago ka na nga. Binulag na nga kita. Pinayagan kita magdasal kay Padre Pio. Ayaw ko pang maniwala. O ngayon, ayan na. Ayaw ko pang maniwala. Batukan na kita.
We join Ramon Rodriguez and all of St. Pio's devotees in the Philippines and all over the world in thanking God for sending us such a uniquely personal friend and spiritual guide. As our journey of faith and enlightenment continues, we look back gratefully to the many memorable encounters we've had and look forward to even more epiphanies to come into the light.